It's time for the weekly blog post.
Okay. Today, the blog post is titled Message to Trump Supporters on Obamacare. Guess what? You get sick too. And I really want you folks to listen to this message. It's a bit longer than normal, so I'll read it a bit faster, but I want you to keep posted, get involved. Anyway, it goes as follows. Many voted for Trump to shake things up. They believed that things could not get worse and hoped it would get better. While Trump is the manifestation the opposition has focused on, it is the GOP using his electoral college win to create policies that will hurt most Americans. And when I say most Americans, I mean most Americans, including the voters who voted for Donald J. Trump. So folks, let's really be factual. Let's really talk to people where it touches their hearts. Let's really start speaking to people, not accusatorily in some accusatory fashion, but to let them know we're all in the same boat together. Obamacare premiums and deductible are high for many. However, any cheaper proposals based on removing regulations will kill or bankrupt Americans, irrespective of them being progressive or conservative or Democrat or Republican or other. We're in the boat together. This message is not meant to be condescending to my Trump brothers and sisters. It is easy for us to go at each other's throats as establishment politicians pit us against each other. There is a purpose. If we are fighting each other, then we can't see that the pilfer is bipartisan. In my humble opinion, as a Democrat, I do think one side is more humane than the other, but that is not what I want to address here. I want us to fight for a public good that affect us all equally and should not be ideological. I am not one who believes all Trump supporters are racists. I know many. Hell, I have relatives who voted for Trump. I will admit, I simply cannot understand how anyone can look at the man, what he has said and done to women, what he has said about the other, and still vote for him. But that is one water under the bridge. I care too much about all of us. And by all of us, I'm not talking about my liberal brethren. I'm talking about my conservative brethren. I'm talking about my right-wing brethren. I'm talking about every part of this country. I care too much to consider or to be bothered by that. We just have to remember that. I simply cannot understand how anyone voted for him now, but that is water under the bridge. I care too much about all of us to make it a personal grudge, except for the sect of his supporters that are in fact white supremacists. Now, health is something that knows no political inclinations. We all want to be fixed if we get sick. Please do not buy into the fallacy that Obamacare was a government takeover of healthcare. This should have been fought hard from the beginning before it metastasized into many of our right-wing brothers and sisters' heads. Not because your anti-Obamacare politician says it is, means it is true. You interact with your healthcare system through your doctor, your hospital, and your drugstore. Your doctor works for herself or himself or for a private corporation. Your hospital is a private corporation. Your drugstore is a private corporation. The drug companies that supply the drugs to the drugstore are private corporations. The companies that supply the tools to the hospitals are private corporations. The supplies used in the doctor's offices are private corporations. The insurance companies that pay the bills are private corporations. It cannot be a government takeover if the system is run almost entirely by the private sector via private corporations and private doctors. Before Obamacare, there were much fewer rules governing what these corporations could do. Corporations are profit centers. They have a fiduciary responsibility to make a profit for the people who own the corporation, the shareholders. As such, they always try to minimize their cost. Obamacare is mostly a body of rules, regulations, and taxes intended to ensure that the service they provide falls within guidelines, the ultimate goal being the good health and safety of every American citizen. It is no different than the government mandating a speed limit through research to keep us relatively safe on the roads. It is no different than the government making some substances illegal to prevent unnecessary deaths. Obamacare ensures that everyone has access to health care. Most Republican politicians hate regulations. So they tell Americans that regulations are responsible for most of our problems. Most regulations came into being because before them, people were hurt. Think about all the regulations that cleaned up the environment. Think about all the regulations that made sure they couldn't sell you junk. Think about all the regulations that people use to prevent others from giving you substances that could kill you, from snake oil salesmen and that sort of thing. Before Obamacare, you could buy insurance that was worthless. The premiums were cheap, but at the time you needed to use it, many found them useless because they excluded just about everything. Obamacare ensures women do not pay more than men for health insurance. The law ensures an insurance company cannot cancel your policy when you get sick. It makes sure that no one can be denied health insurance because of a pre-existing condition. It makes sure that your coverage includes yearly early screenings and much more. In other words, Obamacare set a baseline of health care requirements to ensure a fairly healthy population. It is true. It is absolutely true. This meant that the market for cheap insurance was dead. It was assassinated. It was terminated. It was something that needed to be done. The reality, the cheap insurance cost the entire system more, either because the person owning the cheap insurance either remained without care or was ultimately subsidized by us all. Meaning, while we gave profits to these corporations who sold cheap insurance, we, the taxpayer, ended up paying the bill for those people who eventually could not use the insurance that they bought. In other words, the bill got paid by all of us who had good insurance. If you listen to the debate between Senator Sanders and Ted Cruz, it is important to read between the Ted Cruz's lines. He wants to give you choices. He wants to give you freedom. Do you know, or do you want the choice of buying either water with lead or water without, or do you want safe water? When Republican politicians talk about choices, it isn't your choice. It isn't your choice. It is a choice. It is a corporations given a choice to sell you crappy insurance that make them a profit with no risk. In other words, it is asking, your choice is really allowing somebody to sell you something that could kill you or something that is worthless. That's not really your choice. That is a false choice. It is not surprising that after fact checking, it turned out Ted Cruz mostly lied. Typical. The only way all these different policies can seem bad is that if you are lied to. And I'm telling to every single American right now, when it comes to the healthcare system, most of your politicians have been lying to you. They like to play up the Obama's big lie. If you like your insurance, you can keep it, or if you like your doctor, you can keep the doctor. That wasn't quite accurate. But it should have said, if you like your doctor and you're willing to pay the price at whatever cost for that doctor, you could keep it. That would have been a truer statement. But here's the deal. The other side of the coin says you can be left without insurance. You can die. Okay? That is the reality. Obamacare is a market solution to our health insurance problems. Listen, it is a Republican plan implemented by Mitt Romney in Massachusetts and designed by the conservative Heritage Foundation. The reason the Republican politicians have not been able to come up with a replacement plan over the last 7 years is that it is their plan implemented by a Democrat. How can you come up with a plan when the plan implemented was what you wanted in the first place? The failures of Obamacare that need fixing is not unexpected. Obamacare was just a start. It was always known that a market solution is by definition more inefficient. Money is going to profits, or money is not going to pay a health care bill or it actually increases premiums. That is a fact. Healthcare is not one of those things that are suited for the market. The market is not a humane entity, and we can talk about that later on. Ask yourself a question. Ask yourself a question. Why do we need hundreds of insurance companies and plans to pay a medical bill? Why pay for all that complexity, that overhead to pay a bill? Wouldn't it be easier to have one entity paying every medical bill? It isn't rocket science. The reason why is that those hundreds of corporations see it as easy money. They collect premiums, take some off the top for CEOs, shareholders, advertising friends, and more, and much more. The rest then pay a bill. They do something called risk management to attempt to ensure only healthy people to make sure they can keep more of your premiums. That is why you need risk management. It's a false thing. Now, suppose you did not have to pay hundreds of CEOs, administrators, advertising management, management of databases, risk management professionals, and more. Then your insurance would be cheaper by more than 20%. Medicare for all with a 3% overhead does just that. We should only be fighting for Obamacare repeal if the results were Medicare for all, a single-payer solution that ensures all Americans have health insurance and health care. In fact, that's the only humane thing, folks. That is the only humane thing. Anything short of that gives you different gradations of immorality. We are currently in one of the most immoral healthcare systems, bar none. Immoral. Remember that. Whenever you hear United States a senator talk about our system, just answer the phone or answer the question, and you realize that we're talking about mass immorality in our system here. Mass immorality. You go to church on Sundays, you're sitting down next to one of your neighbors. Your neighbor, 1 in 4 of your neighbors here in Texas at those big churches that you're going to, that you're paying the pastor a ton of money, that person is without insurance. And the thing about it is most of you in those churches are some of the biggest supporters of the repeal to further hurt your fellow man. Think about that, folks. Think about that. Not accusatory, but just a statement of fact. If you enlighten yourself to the reality of healthcare and how it works, which is what I attempt to do, if you enlighten yourself about it and you're a moral person, you cannot help but come to the appropriate conclusion. But to end the blog post, your ideology does not matter to me. Your party affiliation does not matter to me. What matters is that we do not allow politicians to spin us into bad decisions. Bad decisions on healthcare policy is a death sentence for many. All of us should band together on this one. I don't care if you're a Trump voter. I don't care if you're a Jill Stein voter. I don't care if you're a Clinton voter. I don't care if you're who's the other person? Johnson voter. We should be banding together for this. All of us should band together on this one. First, let us ensure they do not repeal Obamacare. Period. That's the beginning. It's not the best, but it's the stopgap. The progress made thus far. It is progress made thus far. But let's come up with modifications that we can all support.